Good morning to those of you that are just joining us now. We haven't begun yet. We're just letting people into the Zoom presentation as we speak. We've got a few more people that are waiting to come in, so we're going to wait just a few minutes, and then we'll kick things off in probably about 2 minutes. I will say this to those who are waiting before we get started. Megan is going to ask for 2 or 3 people to volunteer to be able to give some feedback during today's presentation. If we don't get a lot of volunteers, she may have to volunteer some people. So if you're feeling especially ambitious today, please go ahead and when she asks for those volunteers, maybe step up and raise your hand or even speak up, and she'll happily utilize you in today's presentation, because it will be an interactive format.
Yeah, to that effect, Tommy, I see a couple people I know already, so maybe I can ask them. Like Allison, would you mind being one of our volunteers today?
I will tentatively say absolutely.
That would be great.
We'll have to see what you're asking me, but yes.
Yeah, you'll be sharing what would success look like for your business in 2021 and some of the things that you'll track to reach that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Byron, do you feel like being a nonprofit example today?
Megan, I would love to. Unfortunately, I am going to have to drop early because I have a marketing meeting at 8:30.
Okay, no problem. Good to know. Thanks.
Megan, right next to Byron, I see another familiar face from Portland downtown. Amy, if you are able to hear me and willing, would you be able to be a volunteer?
I'd be happy to. Thanks, Tommy.
Awesome. Amy, this is Megan. Megan, Amy.
Thanks, Amy.
And I see some other friends too. If there's anybody else that would like to step up and again be able to share their some of their plans so that we can utilize that in part of the presentation, please let me know. Otherwise, we will volunteer you. Okay, we're going to start things in about 30 seconds. I'm seeing that we've got about 20 or so people in right now. So we're going to let a few people check in as we're getting going. But if you're here for the Eaton Peabody Growth Basics for Business, creating a business scorecard, what gets measured gets done, you're in the right place. Good morning and welcome everybody. My name is Tommy Johnson. I'm with the Portland Regional Chamber of Commerce. Before we get started, I would like to take a moment to recognize and thank our series sponsor, Eaton Peabody. They've been the exclusive sponsor of the Growth Basics for Business series for the past 3 years. And I've been fortunate enough to work with their team in developing this series, including marketing manager, Nate Levesque. I'd like to introduce Nate and let him say a few words.
Thank you, Tommy. I'm Nate Levesque, the marketing manager for Eaton Peabody. I want to thank everyone for taking the time to join us today. I'm a huge fan of these events. I've attended almost every one of them. And I always learn something new, and I'm looking forward to learning a thing or two from Megan Piper today. For those of you that do not know Eaton Peabody, we are a full-service Maine-based law firm with more than 50 attorneys, serving Maine clients from offices in Augusta, Bangor, Brunswick, Ellsworth, and Portland. We provide legal services to a large number of small businesses throughout the state. We help businesses with everything from business incorporation, protecting intellectual property, answering employment questions, real estate permitting, and even finding funding. To learn more about our services, you can visit our website, www.eatonpeabody.com, or follow us on Facebook to stay up to date on legal updates and other future presentations. Thank you, Tommy.
Thank you, Nate. And I say this every month that we've been virtual, but when these events are live, Nate does provide the best morning snacks, coffee and and snacks. So when this series does go back to being a live event, hopefully post-COVID, we'll be able to see all of you in the live environment. Some ground rules today before we get going. Our program is going to last about 40 minutes, which will leave us some time for Q&A at the end. If you have questions, you can either raise your hand or type them into the chat function, and they will be provided to the presenter. And you'll see that this will become an interactive presentation. If you're unable to ask your question today or you wish to revisit the presentation, today's event will be recorded and made available on the Chamber's YouTube channel, accessible via our website. A follow-up email will be sent tomorrow to all registered attendees, including slides from today's presentation, the link to the recording, and additional resources that will be provided by today's presenter. Now, I'd like to introduce Megan Piper. She is the Principal Consultant at Piper Consulting, where she works closely with leaders to identify and resolve roadblocks to growth. With a mission to help leaders reignite passion and drive results, her success derives from her ability to have in-depth understanding of clients' needs. Piper Consulting offers services such as business strategy, leadership development, executive coaching, and financial management. She inspires client trust through active listening combined with thoughtful and direct feedback. She instills purpose and accountability across leadership teams while providing tools to measure progress against meaningful metrics. Please join me in welcoming Megan Piper.
Great. Thanks so much, Tommy. And thank you so much to the Portland Chamber of Commerce and Eaton Peabody for having me here today. I'm so excited to be invited to present to Growth Basics on Small Business, because that is what I am all about. I thrive on helping small business leadership teams figure out how to grow in a really basic, simple way. There's a lot of common issues that we all face across small businesses. And I find that in working with entrepreneurial leadership teams to define where do they want to go, how do we execute on it on a day-to-day basis, and how do we grow a healthy leadership team to get there? That's what I love doing. So what I'm going to share with you today is a process for building a scorecard to drive success in your business or organization in 2021. This is one of the tools from a system that I teach that's called the Entrepreneurial Operating System. So without further ado, we are gonna dive in, and I did ask for a couple of volunteers to share their thoughts as they build their scorecard, because I think it's so helpful to everyone to hear examples along the way. So Allison agreed, and Allison is a personal finance coach, and Amy from the Portland Chamber of Commerce. And I'd love one more volunteer, ideally like a small business leadership team member, because that's like the heart of what we're going to do today. Is there somebody else that would like to volunteer? Maybe you can just put it into the chat or raise your hand, and the great team here.
If you're going soon, I can go.
Okay, sure. That sounds great. Thank you, Byron. He'll be our nonprofit example. We appreciate that. All right, so let me share screens with you all. Can everybody see the PowerPoint? Yes, okay. So just some quick objectives to run through. What is it that we want to accomplish today? I am all about having a fun, interactive workshop. So please don't make me listen to myself for an hour, because that'll be boring. I want to hear from all of you and how you're processing what we're talking about. I want to make sure that you walk away with some practical tools to help you to get more out of your business and to drive the success that you're looking for in 2021. And to that effect, we're going to aim to walk away today with 2 to 5 key measurables that you're going to track to drive that success in your business. Our agenda is a quick introduction, which we're already done. And then I'm going to dive into a little bit of teaching to give you some context about what is a scorecard and why is it important to have one. We'll take that learning and apply it through some exercises, and you'll walk away with a scorecard that you can track key metrics weekly in your organization in the coming year. We'll do a quick conclusion so that you have my contact information. For anyone who's interested attending today, I do offer complimentary 90-minute meetings with your small business leadership team or your entrepreneurial organization. I love doing that. I love having the meetings. I love helping whether or not you decide to engage with me long-term. So please do reach out and schedule one of those meetings. So, scorecard basics. What is a scorecard? It is quite simply a tool to track weekly activity metrics. Facts are your friends. All of us that are working in small or large organizations, it can feel very hectic on the day-to-day. So it's really important to drill down to what are some key facts and figures on which you can run your organization. And today I'm going to talk from mostly a company level perspective, but all of what we discuss applies whether you're in a company or a nonprofit. You can think of it at the organizational level, you can think of it at the departmental level or at the individual level. So please apply these concepts in the way that best works for you. Most of the examples I give will be at the company level. So there are 5 truths behind why having a scorecard matters. The first one is that what gets measured gets done. I like to give the example of weight loss. So let's take 2 different examples. Say that one person says, I want to lose weight. I want to lose some weight in the next month. And then person 2 says, I want to lose 10 pounds in the next month. I'm going to do this by exercising every day, tracking everything that I eat, and losing 2 pounds per week. Hopefully you can see how that second person that has a clear plan is more likely to result in the weight loss that they desire by the end of that month. Versus the first person who's like, I'm going to try and lose some weight. How do you track progress? How do you know what you're going to change as a behavior and do differently every day to achieve that goal? So that's our goal with the scorecard, is that what you measure will get done. Managing metrics saves time. It really is worth it. It takes about 15 minutes a week to track a few key metrics in your organization. So the time that it saves and helping you to see what's coming and prevent train wrecks and to build a strong business based on facts, it's priceless. So it's worth taking the time to do this. A scorecard provides the pulse of your business and the ability to predict what's coming. That's really valuable. We all have been through a very tumultuous business year. A way to see sooner what's coming is really valuable to your business. I love this one. You can expect what you inspect. So let's take that as 2 different pieces. You can expect, so that's people knowing what you're tracking across the organization. It's you communicating to them what you expect to see as a result. And it's very powerful in your organization to communicate to people, where do we want to go? And what do we expect that that looks like as we make that journey? And how can you be part of that? How can you help us to get there? That's a very powerful piece of organizational clarity. And the other piece is inspect. So they will notice what you're watching. And to that effect, make sure that you choose the right things. Because when you choose to track certain metrics, you are communicating, again, a certain behavior that you want to see and a certain goal that you want to reach. If you choose the wrong thing, you can drive an undesired behavior. So choose the metrics that will drive the desired results in your business. And that's what we're going to walk through. And it fosters accountability, trust, and organizational health. Sometimes people think that accountability and trust are mutually exclusive, and they actually go hand in hand and are the foundation of trust in a small business leadership team. So a scorecard fosters accountability and building that strong foundation. 5 quick guiding principles. When you make a scorecard, keep it simple. We're looking for 5 numbers. Even if you only walk away with 2 today that drive what you're trying to get in your business, that's a win. So what often happens is people track 23 KPIs. And when everything is important, nothing becomes important. So keep it simple. Just choose 2 to 5. We're looking for weekly activity numbers. Yes, track them weekly, because we all are capable of getting distracted. So if you tell your organization the 2 to 5 things that are most important to you and that we're going to track them weekly, everybody can stay focused on a weekly basis. If it disappears for a quarter, it doesn't drive the same results. So we're looking for something you can track weekly. We want a goal for each measurable. Imagine if you were going to fly a plane across the Atlantic Ocean and you didn't know where you were going to land. You have to tell people where you're trying to land. What are you trying to get to? When you want to fly across the ocean, if you're going to go to London versus Madrid, that's going to change the distance, the fuel that you need. You're going to need to know how many passengers are you going to have on the plane and how much food are we going to need for them. There's all kinds of data that you need to make that a successful flight, but you have to know your destination in order to get there. So think about that as we're working through your scorecard today. And we're looking for 13 weeks at a glance. So you're going to track 13 weeks on your page. It's going to be on an Excel spreadsheet, and you'll see 13 weeks of columns so that you can see a pattern. That's one of the powers of the scorecard, is you can see what is changing in your business and how to change it in time to course correct if it's going the wrong direction, or if it's going the right direction, which is what we're shooting for. You want to figure out how to maximize that opportunity that you're seeing when the pattern is going the way that you want. And we were going to put a name next to each number. That drives accountability. So if you choose a metric, say in the marketing department, you want to make sure that that marketing leader's name is next to that metric, because they're going to track it and they're going to drive that result. So put names for accountability. That is a quick run through of the 5 truths and the 5 principles. We are going to get started. Everybody ready? We got our volunteers? All right, so let's begin at the end. 2020 has been a rough year. So what we're going to do is skip ahead to 2021. And I want you to envision that we're at the end of 2021. So it's December 31st, 2021, and we're trying to figure out what success looked like. So imagine the best year you possibly can in your organization. It's been fantastic. And write down a few things of what did that year look like. Let's define success in your coming year ahead. And again, you can think about it at your organizational level, at your department, at your individual level. Jot down what success looks like. And I can see a couple of our volunteers on the screen here. So when you have some thoughts written down, Alice and Amy Byron, just unmute yourself and share with us, what does success look like in your organization next year?
Sure. So I'll go ahead quick because I do have to leave. Increased number of students, increased number of scholarships that we provide. From a marketing perspective, increased followers on social media, increased funding, obviously. But all of those, I think, relate to one another for us to be able to provide more programming.
Awesome. Thanks, Byron. Good ones.
I'll go next. So my focus now in my business, I have plenty of individual clients coming through, but my focus is working with employers. And so that's kind of how I visualize success in 2021, is developing relationships with 5 new employers. And I have a sense of how big, or more smaller employers and fewer larger ones. But I think that's where my mind was going. You also had another volunteer. I don't think you saw in the chat.
Yes, I think Amy as well.
Yeah.
Diana said she would do it.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see that. Thank you. Amy, what did you write down as success?
I did. Yeah. So I work with Portland Downtown, not the chamber. Portland Downtown is the Downtown Improvement District in Portland. And what we do is we coordinate with a lot of partners in the city to help with the cleanliness and safety in downtown, help support the cleanliness and safety in downtown. So some of the things that I specifically work on, I'm the program director on some of those behind the scenes activities that we do. So I have increased our peer outreach worker program participation. So we have an outreach worker program partnership. We are working on attempting to get more funding to grow that program. So hoping to increase that program. Also would like to see a reduction in graffiti vandalism. That's something that we focused on exclusively this last year. It was a challenging year for that, regardless. Also would like to see more robust engagement between our teams. And so I'll have to be thinking about some numbers for that. So, but robust engagement between our teams. We have a great opportunity this year with a new public works supervisor in our downtown. We recently lost our Tommy, who was our supervisor downtown for our public works crew for the past over 20 years. He retired. So We have new leadership there and just looking for engagement between our outreach teams and clean and safe teams. So thinking
Awesome.
about that.
Great. Thanks so much, Amy. Diana, share with us what success looks like in 2021, please.
Hi, and I don't need to do this if you have enough volunteers, but I'll start. I'd like to have the equivalent of 20 full-time employees, and which would also mean that I'd like to have a supervisor, and that would also mean I'd have an increase in the amount of clients I have. I'd love to have less employee turnover. And one added thing that's a little bit separate from what I do, but kind of connected, I'd love to have a classroom with a DOE contract. So that would also expand what I just said in other ways.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. And I appreciate you volunteering, Diana, because Byron City needs to drop off. So we'll toggle between the two of you. So I love that you guys jumped ahead of me in the presentation, and a lot of what you gave were outcomes. So that's fantastic, because that's the next thing that we want to do. You want to think what needs to happen in your company to support that success that you defined. So great example from Allison around that she has enough individual clients. So she's trying to target getting more employers to use her financial coaching services. So there are going to be activities that need to happen. And I'm going to add some questions here. Like, what does Allison need to be doing in terms of a sales role or in terms of her finance role? What needs to happen in the different areas of her business to drive that outcome of, by the end of 2021, having more employers using her personal financial coaching services? Or I loved the idea that Amy gave around the reduction in graffiti. That is an outcome that she's looking to have, but there's some activities that need to happen upstream to end up with that outcome. So the next phase of this exercise is to jot down what are the activities that need to happen to support those outcomes that you're looking for. So what does Amy need to do now and on a weekly basis, or somebody in her team needs to do it in order to support reducing graffiti across the city of Portland? Does that make sense from an example perspective? Okay, so take a couple of minutes and write down organizational activities that drive this success that you've defined. What does your sales department need to be doing? What does the finance department need to be doing? What do you need to be doing differently to reach that outcome? Take a couple minutes to write that down, and then we'll have some people share their thoughts around that. Volunteers, when you're ready, just unmute and share some of your thoughts around the activities that you noted.
Hi, this is Amy. I'll go. Around the graffiti one, we worked with a consultant this past year, so we would continue the recommendations of the consultant. We would resume our work group in the spring, continue with our public works crew and our partnership with Learning Works, and we would make outreach efforts to other neighborhood associations so that we can expand beyond just the downtown and reach more of the city of Portland with this work. Monitor the impact through inventories, which I did this past year, and then also discuss the work that we began this year with city management to just keep the effort moving forward. And then in terms of the increasing the peer outreach worker program, be successful with our grant funding. So that's happening right now. Regular engagement with the team as they start to increase, just to make sure that we're supporting them. And then robust engagement between teams, provide the training that we do between our cadets and our outreach teams to include our public works crew as well.
Great. Yeah, so a couple thoughts on what Amy just shared there. It's starting to lead towards certain things you could track on a weekly basis. For example, the idea of the grant funding, like you need to be applying for grants in order to get the grants, in order to have the money that you need to do these sorts of initiatives. So that there might be something you could track weekly around grants. So that's what we're trying to start to refine down to, is what are the sorts of activities we could be tracking weekly on this scorecard to drive the results that we defined. So how about somebody else? What did you write down for activities?
So obviously I was talking about connecting with employers, and what I need to do for sure is network with people who are in the decision-making capacities. And what I already have done, this is it just this past week, is worked with a copywriter and a graphic designer to come up with something I can email out to them. So if I'm meeting with them or before we meet, so I have that. Literally yesterday we finalized it, or and so I think for me it's finding the people to talk to, and then making those connections, and then just talking to them about what is available, what kind of things they could do in terms of financial wellness.
Great. Yeah, and I love that example of networking, because you may want to choose through the scorecard, what's the number of people that you need to network with every week to eventually end up with one employer that engages with you to teach their whole team. So, and when you start your scorecard, you may not even know, and that's okay. It's just that important start to the journey. So maybe you guess I need to talk to 10 employers this week to end up with one that engages with me. And you figure, oh, that's too high. Maybe I can make it lower. Oh, it's not high enough. Make it higher. So your scorecard will evolve over time as we start to define this stuff.
Yeah, I never thought about it in terms of.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'd never thought about it in terms of numbers, but now in doing this, I was thinking about it that way, and I was like, oh, I guess I could make it a metric.
Yeah.
But it was just not something I had thought about quantifying before.
Great, and you had some great areas around marketing to quantify there as well. So you can see how those are two different areas of the business that are going to drive that result, and you can track them. Great. I think Byron had to drop off. Diana, do you have some activities you'd like to share?
Sure. So I didn't get super specific, but definitely something that I could measure. Increasing the amount of prospective employees that I would interview weekly, using more platforms to reach job seekers, partnering with local universities and schools. Maybe like that one is not measurable per se, but maybe contacting a certain amount of people from universities each week that have to do with, or that are teaching, or just, I don't know, the person who's in charge of students. And that's actually all I wrote down for now.
Oh, that's great. So you can see across all these examples, everyone is starting to choose things upstream from the outcome that they want to drive. So what are the things we're doing today and next week to eventually drive that 2021 outcome? So we are going to shift to another exercise that just makes you think about this from a different perspective and to refine down further. Because remember, our goal is to walk away with 2 to 5 key measurables that drive the success you're looking for in 2021. So we are going to do an exercise called Island Life. So let's dream just a little bit more. Let's imagine that you've started 2021, you've figured out what success is going to look like by the end of the year, and say you're 3 months in and you're getting kind of tired, because we all agree that business can be a lot of work. So you're thinking, you know what, I'm going to take advantage of some of these pandemic travel deals and I'm going to fly off to a tropical island, take a risk, fly to the island and unplug. So say that you're going to be sitting on this island, sipping your drink for a month, but back home, you want to make sure your team keeps moving things forward, that you keep driving that result that you're looking for at the end of 2021. You don't want it to go on pause just because you went on vacation. Things should keep moving without you. So you're sitting on the island, and once a week, a plane flies overhead and drops a piece of paper that has 5 numbers on it. It's those 5 most important numbers for you to know every single week, so that by that end of that week, you can decide, do I need to get back on the plane and go home and turn things around, or are they moving in the right direction? Am I still driving that result that I wanted to see? So look through what you already wrote on the piece of paper. You may have already written down some of these 5 things that you'd want to be tracking, or just thinking about it that way may get you to kind of edit something that you wrote down so that it turns into a metric you'd want to see on that piece of paper that's dropped once a week on your tropical island. So take a minute to do that, and then we will go around to the volunteers and hear what they thought. Let's start with Diana this time. Diana, let's assume you have that great team that you're looking to build and they are working while you're on the island. What are you tracking?
Okay, so I did 2 different things, but I didn't get to finish the second one. But so going along with the goal that I have now, that I don't have my big team yet, but people are helping me. I want to know what the number of applicants that week, the number of interviews that were made from those applicants, the number of prospective hires, because not everybody that sends in an application can be hired. The number of actual hires that were made, and the number of clients they can support, because some of them are only going to be able to do 1, some can do 2. But then if I had my entire team, I only got 2 number points. I would want to know what are the number of potential hours to be worked, and then the number of hours they actually worked. So I want to know what's the how everybody's faring compared to what they could be doing. But I didn't think of anything else after that.
So it's like a utilization rate.
Yes.
Okay, great. No, those are fantastic. Allison, go ahead.
Okay, I don't want to follow Diana. She did so well. She has more numbers than me. I think my thing is very narrow right now. My one focus is very narrow. So I came up with 3, which is number of emails initially, sending out, seeking, a connection or an introduction or a meeting. And then number of meetings actually. This is, of course, I am sole proprietor. So this is like my shadow self working while I am on this island.
It's your parallel universe.
Right, exactly. So how many meetings I actually had, and then kind of just checking the box with as far as following up. That's not really a metric, but just kind of making sure that happens.
Yeah.
And making sure they have all the information that they're looking for.
Actually, I really like that one. Just number of times you follow up. Sometimes people try to go too scientific and have a fancy spreadsheet that tracks this stuff. Like, keep it simple. It can just be little ticks that you make on a piece of paper, and once a week you add them up. It doesn't have to be sophisticated to get the result that you want. So that's great. Amy, what did you put down?
I put down, let's see, so under the grant funding for the outreach worker program, a number of drafts with dates that those are due, and meetings with potential funders or supporters of the program. Under graffiti removal hours from our public works crew, and the Learning Works crew reports square footage removed and the locations. And then under the more robust engagement between teams, the number of times the cadets reached out to our outreach team, and as well to the public works team if they needed assistance. And then the second one, the number of times that the Department of Public Works reached out to the outreach team or the cadets.
Awesome. Boy, we got 3 great volunteers today. I appreciate you guys. You give great examples. So what we're going to do next is take all of the work you've done and put it together into the end result. On my next slide, I have a bunch of examples. Those are going to go out to you in the slide deck that we're sending tomorrow. So you'll have all of these if you want some more ideas to generate around what could you be tracking. But we're not going to sit and have you read them right now. So let's put this all together and actually build your scorecard. You're going to, on your piece of paper, just make some columns. Pretend you're making an Excel document, or you can pull up an Excel. So your first column is going to be the who. Who is driving this measurable that you're about to define? So for Allison, she's going to have her name next to all of them because she's a sole proprietor. Mine would look the same. For those of you that have a team, like Amy was talking about different team members, she's going to want to choose the who that's driving that metric, because they're the ones that are going to track it and report on it and make sure it's going the right direction. Then write down your measurable. Keep it simple. Some of you were describing basically moving leads through a sales funnel. So it might just be the number of meetings that you have or the number of prospects that you've talked to that week. Just make it a simple measurable that's easy to track. Then you're going to put a goal. Like as we discussed with Allison, she doesn't quite know how many people she needs to talk to. So just take a guess. It's better to start somewhere and take a shot in the dark than to have no goal at all and not know what you're trying to hit. So start with something, and then you're going to start tracking results. Here you can see a picture of what the scorecard would look like. So in the first column, we have the who that's driving that result. Then we have the measurable. In this case, Amy, who leads sales, is trying to get a particular quantity of prospect meetings. Her goal is 5. In the first week of January, she only got 3. It's kind of hard to get people to do a meeting the first week of January. So that's red because she didn't hit her goal. Then the next week she hits 9. So that's great. She made up for the week before. That one's green. Then she drops to 2. Now she goes to 5. Then she goes to 6. And by the end of those 13 weeks, you'll start to see a pattern, whether she's chosen the right goal, kind of how are things trending. And you'll discuss this as a leadership team or as a department, and you'll have a ton of learnings that come out of that. You'll start to learn, what do our prospect meetings look like as a trend, and how can we make them better, or how do we get more of them? They'll start to be actionable insights from just that factor of tracking these weekly metrics. So it's that simple. It only took a few minutes for us to work through this exercise and for you to start to have an idea of a couple ways that you can track success in 2021. Again, we will send this scorecard out to you so that you have an Excel document you can just fill in. I'd love to hear if anybody wants to share a metric, somebody that hasn't shared yet. Go ahead, Diana. Yeah.
I just have a question. So on the scorecard, and maybe this isn't even important at all, but say for instance, she has her meeting, her goal of 5 per week, and consistently, maybe the first week of every month, she only gets like 2 or 3, but the rest of the month, she has enough so that total, she has like her 20 per month. Should she then revamp her goal because she's not meeting that weekly one? Or should she say, okay, overall, I'm meeting my goal? What would you recommend?
So what I recommend people do with this to operationalize it is you actually have a moment you discuss this every week with somebody. So then the answer to Diana's question is it depends. It depends on what you're trying to achieve as a company. So most of the time I recommend this happens in a small business leadership team. So the leadership team has a weekly meeting where they run through these metrics and they say each one is on track or off track. So then after they've discussed Amy's metric for a few weeks, they'll have an answer to Diana's question of how do they want to change the goal? Do they want to change how they're reaching out to prospects? Like there can be all kinds of different things you learn from those discussions. The value actually comes from the tracking and those discussions that get generated as a result of it. So somebody like Allison, who's a sole proprietor, and I am as well, it can be really hard to have someone hold you accountable. So I really recommend like having a peer or a coach or somebody that you say, hey, I just want to send you my scorecard once a week, so that I feel like I'm accountable to somebody for keeping these numbers on track. There's a lot of power in accountability. So does that answer your question, Diana? Great. Any other questions or thoughts on what you built out on your scorecard? Anybody's welcome to share. All right, you guys are quiet.
I have a question, Megan.
Yeah.
A lot of these things, I work hard to get, really put things on a little bit onto other people, give some leadership to other folks so that I'm not doing everything. And so do you have any tips on that one in terms of, maybe back and forth between who you're sort of leaning on for these data points, encouragement, stuff like that?
Yes, great question. I recommend that you share with your organization what you're now going to be tracking, because there's a lot of power in that visibility, and that you're putting the person who drives it in charge of it. So actually, Amy probably shouldn't be tracking any of these herself on her own. She's going to communicate it out to the organization and say, hey, these are the 5 things we're going to track this year. Joe's going to report on his, Amy's going to report on hers. And then we're going to discuss them every week to make sure that we make the progress that we're looking for. So the person that is, say, the project manager of the scorecard actually does very little of the work. I would usually say, if your meeting every week is 10 a.m. on Tuesday, then by Monday at 5 p.m., they need to have filled in their metric for the week so that you have a chance to skim the metrics, see how they're going, and be ready to discuss them as a team. Great question, thanks. All right, so next steps, again, let your scorecard evolve. Adoption takes time. It takes time for your team to realize we're really going to track this stuff and see how it goes and be consistent, because the value comes over time watching this stuff, not just a one-time event. And I'm happy to help. So please reach out to schedule a complimentary 90-minute meeting with your leadership team. I would love to help you with your scorecard and other ways to drive vision, traction, and cohesion in 2021 in your company. Here's my contact info, and thank you for joining today. I hope that you got something valuable out of it.
Megan, thank you again for taking us through the process. We do have a few minutes for any additional questions, and maybe something that Megan didn't cover or something that you want to get a little bit deeper into. If anybody has questions now, feel free to unmute yourself, or you can just raise your hand if you'd like. But we're happy to have questions right now. We've got a little bit of time up until the 9 o'clock hour.
Okay, I'll ask a question. So for people like myself and Allison, who are just the only person who does these sort of things, who would you recommend involving in those weekly conversations? I don't want to have the people who I supervise helping me with those weekly conversations. So is it okay to do family and friends, or should I look outside my organization? What do you recommend for that?
I would recommend either an industry peer, somebody that you often share best practices with, that you already have a relationship and can, quickly call them out or say, hey, can I email you my scorecard once a week and you can help me to stay on track. I agree, definitely not somebody within your company unless it is, it doesn't make sense if it's somebody that's reporting to you, though hopefully you're going to have this great team. And then as you build that team, you're going to be discussing it together. But it absolutely can work with a family or friend as well. pick somebody that is comfortable holding people accountable. There are people that don't like conflict and don't like messy conversations. So don't pick that person. Pick a person that loves to say to you, hey, you're not on track. Like, why? Explain this to me. What are you going to do differently next week? So pick someone that's comfortable with those types of conversations. Any other questions?
Megan, I'm going to ask you a question. I know that some of our volunteers today, and thank you very much to the individuals who stepped up to volunteer their own scorecards. Many of them are with smaller organizations. How might this apply to a larger organization? Let's say an organization somewhere in maybe the 20 to 50 person employee count.
Yeah, so what I teach to my typical customer has 10 to 250 employees, and I teach them to roll this out to the departments. So first I teach at the leadership team level, like at the company level, what are the 5 to 15 metrics that we should be tracking to hit success? And then once they get that as a regular habit, they roll it out to the departments. So you'll end up with a sales scorecard and a finance scorecard and an operational scorecard. And it usually is more detailed metrics that support those bigger company level metrics. So say that on the leadership team level at the marketing area, you're tracking overall followers on social media. Then when you get to that marketing scorecard, it's going to maybe break it down by social media platform. You might have the percentage increase of followers on Facebook each week or on Instagram each week. And then eventually you want to have everybody in your company have a number that they're accountable for. And again, a lot of the value of this isn't just in the tracking, it's in those conversations and identifying where do we want to go and what do we need to track to get there. So you'd have a one-on-one conversation with each person in your company to figure out what is the one number that they drive that drives the overall success and where you're trying to go as a company. So you can scale this out to large companies, small companies. Typically, again, I'm working with a small business leadership team. We start at the leadership team level, then we roll it out to the department level, then we roll it out to the individual level.
Thank you. And you answered the second part of my question with how each person should be responsible for an individual metric. Do you oftentimes find one or two or more leaders within an organization and have them have their own unique scorecard? So like you gave the example of marketing. Might you have somebody in marketing keep a scorecard and somebody in production and somebody in distribution? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it becomes a common language across the company. Everyone comes to the point where they expect everybody here has a scorecard. Everyone's tracking at least one number, and they'll ask each other about their numbers and be curious, what are the trends in each department? That's something I recommend that each company has a quarterly state of the company meeting. And that's your opportunity to share with everybody, you know, where have we been in the past quarter? Where are we now? Where are we trying to go? And what are the metrics that we're tracking around that? How are we tracking progress?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We do have time if there are any other questions for Megan. If you're not comfortable asking it in this format, you can type them into the chat and I can convey them to her. Or if not, we've got her information right here. We've got her contact information. If there are no other questions, Megan, I want to say another big thank you to you and for all of our volunteers for stepping up today. But this is great content, and hopefully those of you who attended today can utilize this. Keep in mind, this presentation with the entire deck will be emailed out to you, and the video recording of this event today will be available on the Chamber's website through our YouTube channel. To stay tuned to any other upcoming events that the Chamber is hosting, please do visit our website, www.portlandregion.com. You can also become a subscriber to our newsletter from our website. Just go to our home screen, click on newsletter, and you can subscribe right there. It just takes a couple seconds to stay up to date on any events that we're doing throughout the month. Again, big thank you to Megan and to everyone who participated today. Have a great rest of the day and have a great Thanksgiving week.
Thanks
Bye,
so much
everyone.
for coming. Take care.